Welcome to Engineering Influence Podcast from the American Council of Engineering Companies. And this week we are having a kind of a brainstorm with the ACEC Research Institute, bringing down some of the members of the board, our Enable board, and some of our donors to talk about the bigger issues going on with the industry and the Institute's work. And a member of that group is Mike Piernicky. He is Vice President of Transportation and Government Affairs for Olsson. And I'm very pleased to be joined with him today to talk about his firm, what he's working on, and kind of the outlook from his perspective on the industry. So, Mike, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us, Jeff.
I like the title is Vice President of Transportation and Government Relations. And I think a lot of people out there who might not be completely familiar with the industry might not realize exactly how much government relations work happens at engineering firms. So how did that and government relations part get tagged on with the transportation?
Certainly, I have a technical transportation engineer is my background, but if you're in the industry long enough and you work projects, you learn that telling the story about your projects, getting public understanding, but then also having elected leadership understand what you're doing and having those relationships to support projects and be able to move communities forward, that became an important part. Certainly, as our company's grown significantly over the 17 and a half years I've been there, we now have approaching 2,000 staff members across the country, and they're asking for support and leadership in how do you engage and how do you tell the stories of why projects are important, and making sure that you know how to get it through the process. And that's where the government affairs and leadership and organizing around that to support our staff members nationally came from.
It's kind of interesting how many people who might not be directly engaged with the engineering industry or might be interested in it or looking at it from the technical aspect, which of course is huge, and the hard sciences and everything you have to do. But how many times engineers, especially in transportation and infrastructure work, are actually engaged at the community level and stakeholder engagement, dealing with the local governments, the NEPA kind of things, or the NIMBY, not just NEPA, yeah, but NEPA also, and everything else that goes on, that you have to work as an engineer and then also almost like a community organizer to make sure that the people understand, the communities understand the positive impact of the work that you guys are doing. And so that's always an interesting thing. And you mentioned Olsson, the fact that it's grown upwards of 2,000 employees across the country. Tell us about the firm, a little bit of where it started out and how it has kind of grown, because one of the things that, we've seen is that during the pandemic, it actually was a pivot point for growth for the firm. So give us a little bit of background there.
Yeah, certainly. We started with one individual, John E. Olsson, as our founder, but as we've grown over time from Nebraska to throughout the Midwest, Southwest United States, and certainly now doing work nationally, we find that, that multidisciplinary approach for public, private, and institutional clients, which is who we serve, honestly, our clients have taken us across the United States. And so as you talk about the pandemic and a lot of the stuff that we've seen over time, we got a lot of learnings out of that we've brought forward with regards to we exist for our employees, and our employees then really take care of all of our clients, and our clients take us places we would have never imagined 10, 15 years ago. And how you do that and meeting them where they are through that process, we've learned a lot that we're continuing on that really are driven in our core tenets on we're an employee-first firm, and then certainly what are we doing to invest in them and make sure that they're taken care of as a whole person so that they can present themselves and be highly engaged in our work and be part of our great community. And it's been a really great experience over the last couple of years.
Give some examples of how the firm's kind of pivoted or changed to deal with the, post-pandemic effects of the workforce. Quite honestly, it's throughout the economy. Every sector has seen some kind of disruption. So how's Olsson kind of dealt with that?
It's exhibited its way. It's exhibited itself in a number of different ways. One example is kind of our flexible work environment discussion. With the pandemic, having offices across the country, different areas of the country reacted to that differently, and so we had to be flexible. And one of the key tenets we have is to really meet our employees where they're at, and to have decisions made by those folks that are closest to the issues they're dealing with. And so, for example, our environment, our flexible work environment, it's really, if you boil it all down, is supervisors working with each of our employees to determine what work environment's best for them, be that in the office all the time, flexible remote, and or hybrid situations. Those are the things that we brought forward. The learnings have been, we actually saw, increased performance of our business. Our employee satisfaction's gone up, and we've actually seen client satisfaction go up because of how we've engaged and how positive our employees have been working through what were some difficult times and situations. But it's allowed us to respond flexibly and nimbly to those things that presented.
More of an individual approach of, what works best for the project teams that are assigned to the project. So you're able to kind of customize it to the need and to the best working area and the culture. And speaking of culture, I guess, looking ahead to everybody's, of course, the engineering field right now. I mean, we're at the point where, if you want a job in an engineering firm, you're going to get one because we're practically in full employment. For the next, everybody's competing for talent. How do you think that change and kind of the way that you guys have dealt with the disruptions that happened with the pandemic, how do you think that set you up with a competitive advantage on employee acquisition and retention?
Really, that story and that culture sells itself. Our employees are our best sales folks and recruiters. Certainly, we have all of the things in place from a recruiting group and HR and all of the things that you would need to bring employees on, but it's that word of mouth. It's our culture of our employees, recruiting the people they know in the industry, their friends and compatriots at other places. It's been an advantage because it sells itself.
Yeah.
And so it goes back to our tenets. If we take wonderful care of our employees, make sure they have everything they need to be a whole person, present themselves at work, they take care of the rest as our best ambassadors out in the market.
Looking at the growth that you've had as a firm and now becoming evolving into a national presence, where do you see the biggest opportunity for growth, and what markets do you think are probably the best, most attractive ones in the near term?
Certainly, we're actually redoing our 5-year strategic plan and vision currently, and we generally organize around 6 different markets, be it environment, energy, transportation, water, and federal. And so as far as a growth standpoint, we certainly see opportunities in each of them. But our kind of strategic point is making sure that we're serving both public, private, and institutional clients so that, we're diversified. But we're seeing a lot of opportunity where those things cross. Because as you look at larger projects, be it on a private side, it'll have major impacts to your public infrastructure and local agencies and state agencies that then have to be coming together to work to solve the infrastructure needs that we have. So our focus is working on those key markets, but then those intersection points between public, private, and institutional clients.
Yeah, especially in those markets. I mean, and that's where, of course, the largest federal investment is being made. I mean, you have the IIJA now in place, and now it's, the money is coming out through it. You have, of course, the Inflation Reduction Act, and you have some other, the CHIPS Act. How has the increased federal investment, has that translated yet? Are you seeing the impacts of that, or is it yet to be seen in your areas?
Certainly, I think we have seen an increase in the amount of funding that is coming down to states specifically. Part of it's been eaten up by inflation, which I think everybody in our industry is aware of. But without it, we would be in a much worse situation. And certainly, we are starting to see programs from key clients across our footprint start to ramp up. And as well as the private side has followed, where those investments are occurring. They're quick to understand the advantages and the opportunities it's going to provide. And so we're seeing it on both sides of that moving forward.
Let's also, I always want to cross over the idea of the Institute and what you're here to talk about right now, because one of the things the Institute's always looking at when it does its economic assessments are, those market categories and the question of optimism and looking ahead at the challenges. What are you looking to get out of the meeting today, and what would you like the Institute to kind of focus in on in its work moving forward? Of course, we're doing a study on design build. We're doing some work on QPS. What from Olsson's perspective do you think the Institute could really do to help?
A lot of it will revolve around what's over the horizon, be it a lot of the discussion in the industry is about how do we do design and engage our communities around the case for further investment in infrastructure. But then how do we take those investments and make sure that we're designing those improvements that are resilient and taking into account everything that we're dealing with in, the current environment. If you pair that with just pipeline of talent and understanding the culture that we are now seeing for making sure that it really aligns with what we've done at Olsson on meeting our employees where they're at, making sure that they're supported. But how do we plan for and invest in our people and that long-term talent pipeline to make sure that everybody has a place and that we're basically attracting the best and brightest talent to solve those problems of the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we're focused on also here in Washington. It's a question of not just your implementation of the infrastructure bill and what comes after that with the eventual reauthorization to hopefully a brand new investment and not just an extension of what we have. And then, of course, workforce development and making sure that the talent pipeline is full and that we're getting a diverse set of talented people to join the industry and stay in the industry. So look forward to a good discussion today, hopefully. And I really do appreciate taking time to join us in the program and jumping out of the meeting and joining us in the studio.
Yep, Jeff, thank you for having us today. We're glad to be here and certainly happy and feel very honored to be part of this group going forward. So we're looking forward to it.
Great. Love to have you back on, talk about some of the projects that you're working on a little bit later in the year. Maybe if we see you in the spring conference down in downtown, we'll have you on.
Yep, absolutely. Looking forward to it. Thank you, Bill. Thank you so much, Jeff.
Thank you. And again, this has been an episode of Engineering Influence Podcast from the American Council of Engineering Companies. We'll see you next time.